Shelley's poetry can never lose its charm and appeal for any true lover of the muse. Shelley's lyricism has universally been recognized as being incomparable and unsurpassable. And this aspect of his work will always enchant and enthrall the readers. Besides that, Shelley contributed a new quality to English literature, a quality of idealism, freedom, and spiritual audacity. Shelley is the poet of glorious future, possessed by a vision of intellectual beauty. In this talk, we will try to analyze a famous poem by Shelley, Ozymandias. This poem illustrates the vanity of human greatness and the failure of all attempts to immortalize human grandeur. Ozymandias was a great Egyptian king, an emperor, a pharaoh who ruled around 3500 years ago. The poem begins with these words: I met a traveler from an antique land. Antique land here means an ancient country. In this context, it is Egypt, because the Egyptian civilization is one of the oldest in the history of the world, which existed around 3500 years ago. I'll read again. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, here the poem becomes unique because it is a narration inside a narration. The poet met a traveler who narrated the details of his visit to an antique land, and here the poet narrates the narration of the traveler through this poem. The traveler said, two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. There were two huge legs of a broken statue, severed from the legs, and they lie nearby. The trunk or the upper portion of the statue is missing. For a traveler in Egypt, this is a common sight. Many broken and half-buried statues of ancient pharaohs of Egypt exist in various parts of the country and remind a traveler of ancient glory of those kings. The poem relates an experience of a traveler from Egypt. This traveler, who saw two huge and trunkless legs of a statue in the desert, near them half buried the broken face of the statue. On this face can still be seen the expression of haughtiness and sense of authority which had skillfully been depicted by the sculptor. I'll read the lines here. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, you mighty, and despair. The emperor or the pharaoh is so proud of his works. But before that, the narrator explains, near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read. A shattered visage. What is this shattered visage? The broken face of the statue. On the face of that statue, there is an expression of anger, contempt, and sternness. The face shows the hardened sense of authority and power. He was contemptuous. All these expressions were very delicately sculpted out on that statue, on that stone. Tell that its sculptor well those passions read. It is clear that the sculptor who made the statue correctly understood the passions of the feelings of the king and therefore successfully reproduced them on the stage, which yet survive. The passions or the feelings of the king still exist on the face of the statue, while the sculptor who carved those passions or feelings on the stone and the king who experienced those passions or feelings are dead and gone. The hand that mocked them, the sculptor's hand which reproduced, mocked here means to copy, which reproduced or represented the king's feelings on the stone. The imitation was clear, imitated them without feeling any admiration for them. Them refers to the passions, and the heart that fed, the king's heart which nourished or experienced those passions. Now, to be able to get the meaning, we should read these lines again. Whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which stamped on these lifeless things, yet survive the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. The idea is that the king's passions still remain depicted on the stone, while the sculptor's hand and the king's heart are no more. But the sculptor and the king having died long ago. On the pedestal, there are some words which express the proud feeling of Ozymandias. The words are, "My name is Ozymandias." If we look back to the history, King Ozymandias lived around 2100 BC. He was the first soldier king to invade Asia also. "My name is Ozymandias. Look on my works, you mighty and despair. Look at my great deeds, my achievements, and my victories. You powerful and brave warriors, and give up all hope of equaling me. Nobody can become as great as Ozymandias." The inscription on the foot of the pedestal reveals the name of the king and gives us an idea of how great and powerful he was. But the traveler saw that nothing beside remains. Now, after these many years, after around 3,500 years, there is nothing else to be seen near the statue. A vast and desolate and barren desert surrounds the remains of that huge statue which lies broken. Colossal is huge statue bestriding the harbor of roads so that ships could pass under its legs. Colossal therefore means huge. The last three lines describing the present ruined state of the statue present a vivid and pathetic contrast with the preceding two lines which convey the glory of Ozymandias. The poem ends with this line, "The lone and level sands stretch far away." Everything that was constructed by Ozymandias is covered under this lifeless stretch of sand. This poem has a moral for everyone. Human glory and pomp are not everlasting. Hammers of decay quickly follow the hammers of construction. Time works havoc with buildings and monuments. But the moral is not directly stated. The poet only represents a picture to our minds, and we have ourselves to draw the moral. It is a didactic poem, but its moral is not thrust upon us directly. Shelley said that didacticism was his abhorrence, and he did not therefore directly preach moral lessons. There is a touch of melancholy about the poem because it makes us reflect over the vanity of human wishes and the failure of all our efforts to keep our memory alive forever. The contrast between the past glory of the king and the present condition of the statue is very striking to the mind and emphasizes the moral of the poem. The concluding lines of the poem are particularly remarkable for their suggestiveness. The sonnet contains two noteworthy pictures. One is the picture of the broken statue, a huge wreck, the face of which still wears a frown and sneer of cold command. The other is the picture of the lone and level desert, boundless and bare, stretching far away. Thank you for listening.